this whole tournament. That's how much the damage can stack up with that Cramorant VMAX, and he's a serious player. He's got, a World Championships under his belt. He's also won the Latin American International Championships. And, this list, we can only have 4 accomplishments, but both Robin and Tord have endless amounts of regional and international finishes. These guys are some of the most decorated players in the game over the last 5 years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when Tord can actually put down as his accomplishments, I've won 3 international championships. Oh, yeah, and by the way, I made the semi-finals of the World Championships. I don't think there are many players out there that can boast that level of accomplishment. There are 1 or 2 out there, but that is a very, very short list. So now you know the players and the decks. Let's head on into the game. This is a very unique matchup. Let's have a look at exactly how it's going to be panning out.
Yeah, there's a few things to bear in mind. Robin is playing a couple copies of Marnie, only a couple copies of Switch in his deck, and I know Tord can sometimes go for a trapping approach, but I think the biggest thing to keep track of is Recycle Energy. Robin has already kicked off with a couple of them in his opening hand, and these are things that are recoverable as long as he's using them, if there are knockouts being scored, but Tord is going to have to try and use combinations like Team Yell Grunt and then Jesse James to remove these cards so that Robin doesn't essentially have infinite energy.
That's the thing. Recycle Energy is brilliant. If it gets discarded from play, it goes straight back to your hand and life is good. If it gets discarded from your hand, it is gone. And the format we're in at the moment, there isn't really any special energy recovery. So when those special energy hit the discard pile, they stay there. So I absolutely agree. This Recycle Energy is going to be huge. And on the one hand, Robin has got options here in terms of pile energy on and just one hit over and over. He can hit the bench using Cramorant V if there is a Pokédoll in the active, etc. But there's lots of energy and lots of coin flips and big Pokemon and evolution, and that's going to give Tord a little bit of time, and it's going to give some opportunities for Tord to get that lock rolling.
I actually think Robin started with possibly the best attacker in this matchup. The double V, it is weak to fighting, so it can actually get knocked out by Tord's Excadrill, but it has stable damage output, and it can reliably do 120 damage. And with a powerful Colorless Energy, he can do 140, which gets through the Excadrill as well. So I think Robin's pretty happy to see this double V as early as he has. He still probably will try and get a Porygon Z online just to give himself some protection, to get some more burst energy into play. But he does actually know Tord's deck list. There's not many Crushing Hammers at all. So he could just try and, manually attach to this double over the next couple of turns, hold this Marnie for when it's going to be more powerful. So we could see a few passive turns from Robin here. Whereas Tord, he's got the early Jirachi, which is an excellent lead for him. Also his own copy of Capture Energy. So he can go ahead, most likely looking for Zacian V for some early game draw, exactly on time. And he can also, Stellar Wish, no supporter played for him yet. Usually it's things like Birdkeeper or Sonia, which he has in his deck, that he'd want to fire off in the early game.
Absolutely. It's going to be slightly different commentating Tord today, of course. In the previous game, we had access to his hand, so we could see exactly what he was planning at all times, how much of the lock he had established. We're going to be taking it a bit more on faith here, but you see, that Intrepid Sword draws 3 cards. Tord has already got a lot of cards in hand, so Tord is going to have options. And we saw Tord kind of pivoted a bit in that last game we saw from him, where all of a sudden that hand lock came down a lot earlier than it had in previous games, and that really worked out well for him.
Looks like Robin is going to be playing some cards. The one thing you always have to be aware of is that Tord does not need to have Lieutenant Surge online to still be a threat. We saw that with the 2 copies of Wheezing from Hidden Fates that he's playing, you can randomly just catch people with the Jesse James double Wheezing combo. So it tells me that Robin may be forced to play this Marnie here. He's not safe sat on a 4-card hand. You probably want to sit at 5 cards at the very least until you start taking prizes. So we do see the energy drop from Robin. Not going to see any rare candy shenanigans unless he starts chasing a dream with Crobats and alike. So it looks like we are actually going to be seeing this here, the communication coming in. I have to imagine this is going to be to draw some additional cards.
Yeah, and there's plenty of options. You've got Dedenne in there. Oh, it's actually going for the Porygon Z, it looks like. But there's no rare candy in his hand, so that's a slightly interesting one. But it looks like what we're going to see is a very similar thing to yesterday, where this is presumably going to be a Crobat, and then you need that 2-card combo of rare candy with Porygon Z. You've got one of the parts of the combo in your hand, and then Crobat draws you extra cards. If you hit the rare candy, then you get that evolution straight away.
Yeah, I like the push here. He's trying to Marnie in combination with taking a KO on this Jirachi with double. He would only need to find one rare candy and one usable energy, so not triple acceleration in this case. And then he'd be trying to hunt down that Zacian V now that he has already established a Cramorant V. So if he is able to make this push, finds rare candy, finds energy, gets that KO, he's hoping that Tord, you know, ideally only has that Zacian to play with, or has like just one or two other Pokemon maximum and is just ending his turn on Intrepid Sword. So Robin is going to go chasing a little bit here with his Crobat, and let's see if he gets into that knockout. He does get the rare candy and the energy, so yeah, pretty nice disruption. The last game we featured with Tord, he didn't have to come up against any Marnie whatsoever, and now he's facing down a KO on the Jirachi in combination with the Marnie, so very powerful stuff from Robin out the gate.
And we are talking about Stage 2 decks here, right? And Stage 2 decks are not supposed to be that consistent. What part of the issue is supposed to be that they don't run? Well, Robin's deck, we've seen it a few games now. It seems to be running rather nicely. And I love it. Like you say, we've got Porygon Z on board. We've got the KO. Marnie has put Tord down to a 4-card hand. And Tord has only got that Zacian on the field. So even if Tord is able to work out of this, you've got to imagine it's going to be a slower start, and that gives Robin more time to try and get these big KOs on the board, but Tord is playing that Pokédoll there, which is definitely going to try and buy himself a turn at some point very soon.
Yeah, and we must stress that Robin does not play any boss's orders in his deck, so if Tord does throw Lily's Pokédolls into the active, it forces exactly Cramorant to attack for the spit shot. So we are going to see Tord attaches to his Zacian, knowing that it's still a lot for Robin to actually achieve a KO with Cramorant VMAX here. It costs a lot of resources. It would force, you know, switches. It would force this Skylar to become probably Dedenne for a Dede change here. And we'll see if Robin wants to continue to make this push and really just try and tempo out on Tord. That's one thing you don't want to do. The more turns Tord gets, the more cards he accumulates. Robin only has 2 copies of Marnie and 1 copy of Reset Stamp, so there's only a limited number of times that he can stop Tord's hand from getting out of control, and Tord can essentially do anything he wants. So Robin playing on the clock a little bit here. Looks like he's actually eyeing up the Professor's Research rather than a quick ball play here. He is going to actually change up his plan and possibly go for a Dede change play and make that push with Cramorant by the looks of things.
Yeah, I mean, getting early prizes is good. We saw in Tord's game yesterday when he was against the Eternatus. So the Eternatus actually can... No, it wasn't Eternatus, sorry, it was ADP. And those early prizes made such a big difference. And it was so close in some of the games where Tord, you know, was actually victorious in the end, that those early prizes can really make such a change. Although it looks like we've actually got a Crobat here rather than the Dedenne. The only resource that's actually being saved here is that Switch, but against Tord's deck, Switch can actually be a huge card.
Yeah, it's probably worth holding on to. It means that he has the option if he whiffs the VMAX, which incidentally he has done, he can still just hit through the active. So that's a reasonable call from Robin. Still getting 5 draws in. He is getting himself back out of range of just Jesse James plays at the very least. So he's probably reasonably happy to just hold on to this and use a Revenge Blast here. He could also pay Retreat and get back 1 Recycle Energy and then still just Spit Shot onto Type Null just to keep up with that prize race.
I quite like this. Of course, one of the things you have to be a little bit careful of here is when you Spit Shot, you discard the energy. Now, that's not a problem with Recycle Energy, it goes to your hand, but remember that the energy in your hand could potentially be grabbed by Tord, etc. That energy is actually safest on the field. Even if it's in your deck, Reset Stamp plus Jesse and James or things of that nature could be a problem. So if Tord does go into very aggro hand disruption when Robin's got those energy in his hand, it's not such an issue here with Robin having a gigantic hand, but certainly later in the game, that is something he's got to be thinking about.
Yeah, and at any point, Tord could just have a Reset Stamp at this stage. You know, Reset Stamp, Surge, Jesse James. Jesse James is open to him right now. Robin's done a great job of just seeing the attackers that draw cards and get rid of them straight away. Let's get those Pokemon off the board so that Tord is limited, and so much so that Tord is forced to simply Intrepid Sword again here.
That was a very, very slow turn. Just really Intrepid Sword, and that was pretty much the entire turn. And now, you know, Tord's got a large hand. There's definitely some things cooking there. But Robin's also got an awful lot of options. And he's got that brilliant situation now where he's actually got free recycle energy. And again, they are potentially vulnerable in his hand, blah, blah, blah. But having free recycle energy means you can essentially spit shot for free. Having said that, he's going to put a 4th energy on the active.
He's going for it.
He's got to be going for the VMAX.
He's going for it. We're going to see one of those 2 switches hit the discard pile.
He's got it.
He even picks up the reset stamp, which could even help out that little bit more. No Glimwood Tangle, but we can go up to 6 energy cards now. So this is the time to put your chips in the middle, it looks like, for Robin. I feel like it's, no better time than now. You, at the very least, put on the recycle energy. You may just go all in with both, though.
In our intro, you did say there is a time in the game where you need to push your chips to the middle of the table and go, right, I am doing this. I need to try and get a big KO. And when your opponent has 1 Pokemon with 1 energy and a Lily's Pokédoll on the bench, a KO here would be so devastating for Tord and his setup that you've got to think that this is a good idea. But Robin did not actually hit heads. I mean, the only time he hit more than 50% on heads was into a Lily's Pokédoll.
Yeah, it was the Spiritomb, right? It was a 40 hit.
Yes, it was. He needed to do like 10 damage.
So he's hoping here. 6 coin flips, needs 3 of them. So, yeah, let's see some heads.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Again.
No!
So unfortunate for Robin. He only plays 2 copies of Glimwood Tangle, wasn't able to access any of those. Tord, with a huge sigh of relief, he gets an extra turn. He could even pay retreat out of his Zacian now into the Lily's Pokédoll and force Robin to make another Cramorant V and fill his board out. So what a huge relief and a let-off, really, for Tord that was.
And this is the downside of a coin flip deck, and I know that sounds like a terribly obvious statement to make, and I apologise, but we've seen, Robin did fall out of the winner's bracket in our game yesterday, and it was coin flips. The games we saw Robin lose yesterday were winnable were it not for the bad flips, and we've seen it again here. 1 out of 6? You don't expect that.
No, you don't really accommodate for that. You even saw with the 5 that he had, he was debating that last crazy code, thinking, 3 out of 5 is not bad odds for me. But he actually went for the 6th energy and then just flipped awfully afterwards. He has picked up that Cramorant V off the top, though. We could see, well, he's 1 energy shy, even with payment of retreat for recycle energies, to be able to spit shot to finish it off.
And the problem is that you can't use triple acceleration energy, and there's already, 7 non-triple acceleration energy in play, so there's not that many energy in the deck, but like you say, can pay retreat to get the recycle energy back, and then actually powering up that double, like you say, guaranteed damage. And I think Robin wants a turn here where the damage is just going to happen and he doesn't have to flip any coins.
Yeah, if there's anything we've just seen for the last turn, try not to flip coins at all costs, even though your deck is completely based around it.
Oh, I spent so much time on this broadcast talking about how much I love Cramorant and how it is a legitimate deck, really. And now we're just seeing it flip tails after tails. And there's going to be some people watching being like, I know they say this is a good deck, but it doesn't seem to flip many heads.
Or there's going to be people saying, yep, this is exactly how I tested with Cramorant. This is familiar. We've all been there.
Oh, absolutely. So we do see the Stellar Wish from Jirachi here. That's going to give Tord access to another trainer card. It is a Pokemon Communication. And Tord has not been doing a great job setting up his bench. Now, we have seen Robin has been playing Hand Disruption, and Robin has been going after those drawing Pokemon, the type Null, before it can become a Silvally GX. The first Jirachi, they were the 2 prizes Robin has taken so far. He has been actively going after these cards, which are going to turn into draw engines for Tord, and it's been working. Tord's bench here, with several turns into the game, and Tord has got himself a half KO'd Zacian and a Jirachi, and that's it. There's no Minccino on the bench. There's just nothing there. So Tord at this stage, we've seen how well his deck can run, and you made the point yesterday a few times how built his deck is for early game draw. We need to start seeing some of those Pokemon coming down.
Yeah, this communication, I think Robin is kind of scared of exactly this card.
Oh.
Wheezing could be a telltale sign that these 4 cards for Robin are going straight into that discard pile. Tord did scoop up net 1 Minccino, so we can at least get that down. Here comes the Jesse James, which tells me that probably means there's going to be 2 Weezings already in Tord's hand here.
I think that's
because
fair.
He saw Robin go for that Marnie with the Skylar last turn. That means Tord is no longer going to be hand disrupted the entire game. That's also both switches gone for Robin. So now Tord really just needs to look for his boss's orders and his Gala Mines. He plays 2 copies of each of those. That's going to become a huge problem for Robin at this stage.
And one thing to point out, it looks like all 4 recycle energy are actually on the board. And one of the great ways to actually get free retreat all the time would be to have access to those recycle energy. But if a Crobat gets boss's orders here, there just aren't any recycle energy available. And you see Robin's turn there, KO the Jirachi, go down to 3 prizes. But we saw Tord's deck. Tord doesn't really care. Like that 6th prize is going to worry him.
Yeah, in a way, you kind of like the payment of retreat to attack with Cramorant to have those recycle energies in your hand, but then you're just giving Tord the option to Jesse James. So Tord has both those options covered. Now come down the army of Minccino at last for Tord. We'll see if he can make any boss's orders plays or if he just wants to continue, straight away with that Crobat coming up, Galamine combo, mentioned it last turn. It's devastating at this point. Tord knows that both Robin's switches are already gone. As you can see, Robin's going to look through his discard pile. I think he only has access to 1 remaining capture energy. I think that's all he has remaining in his deck to actually retreat this Crobat. We'll see here from Robin if it's in the deck. It is. So he can retreat Crobat. Oh, no, he can't even retreat Crobat. It's a 3 energy retreat cost. Yeah, he needs to replace the stadium.
And that is possible. You know, this with a Glimwood Tangle would give a retreat and a little bit of a reprieve. But remember, Tord's got that X. He doesn't hit it. Although he does hit a Skylar, which can be used to search it.
Yeah. So we can attack one more time. Tord's probably just going to try and do the same thing again, though. He's probably, if he can find his 2nd copy of Boss's Orders and 2nd copy of Galar Mine, he will certainly be attempting this again. And he has more draw this time to try and get there also, because the Mincinos are likely to start evolving next turn. So it is really Robin trying to just squeak over the line. There's no spit shot available for him anymore. The board is too full with these Crobat and Dedenne. So he has to attack, for 3 turns, basically, before Tord, well, now 2 turns, for Tord to find his next boss Galamine combo.
It's not going to be easy. I mean, you said yourself, I don't think there are any other energy that can be used to retreat the Crobat. So even if Robin were to get a 2nd Glimwood Tangle to replace a 2nd Galamine, does Robin even have any energy that can be used to retreat, even with a retreat cost of 1?
It's exactly 1 capture energy remaining in his deck now. So 1 Glimwood Tangle, 1 Glimwood Tangle, 1 capture energy are his last 2 outs. Tord still has the potential to use Lily's Pokédoll as well. So he still has leeway, and we even see Tord put a Lily's Pokédoll down immediately this turn. And he knows now Robin, again, doesn't play Boss's Orders. There's no space for a regular Cramorant V. He's not playing anything like Memory Capsule or anything like that to try and use that spit shot at this stage. So Tord knows that this Lily's Pokédoll guarantees him a turn to continue to develop his board. We are going to see it's time for the Type Null to come down for a potential additional draws, especially helpful once you get to that late game stage where your deck is basically no cards. You can instantly draw back into the hand that you're establishing for yourself with Excadrill. So Tord's working towards his late game pieces.
He really is. And Robin actually could, if he was able, and we know that he can't, but if Robin could access a spit shot here, that would actually KO the Zacian and win the game straight away. But there's no space on the board. He doesn't have the energy in his hand, so it looks like we're just going to see a retreat here. And retreat, like we said, does give access to those recycle energy. And now we're going to see a max jet. But those energy are very, very... They are vulnerable in Robin's hand.
Yeah, they just force the most out of Tord. You're hoping that Tord basically can't use Boss's Orders at this stage, because if you grab back these recycle energies, it forces Tord to use Jesse James stamp plays instead. So it keeps the Cramorant active. That's what Robin's trying to do here with this play.
We saw 3 out of 4 heads, and it was on a Lily's Pokédoll with a Glimwood Tangle in play.
Yep, if only that was the Zacian V,
Can catch a break. Only flips heads lots of times when he only needs to do 20 or 30 damage. The flips are not going for him. Now, good news is he's so close to winning, but he's going to need essentially 2 more attacks. And at some point, Tord is going to draw a Boss's Orders Galamine combination. Robin is actually able to get out of that with the hand he's got at the moment. But if we see Excadrill starting to do Excadrill things, Robin is going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he's at the 2-card hand size, which is kind of the most dangerous if Tord is able to accumulate Reset Stamp, Lieutenant Surge, Jesse James, Boss. That's where things get very dicey for you. Tord is going to use an Ordinary Rod here to reload some Pokemon. Could even just be more draw at this point. He even needs energy cards just for payment of retreat at times, I think, here. So we'll see what he wants to reload. He still has 21 cards in his deck, which, for a deck that Tord's playing, it's actually loads. Robin's done very well at pressurizing early, using them, as much disruption as possible. And we even see Tord going for a Jirachi here. So I imagine he has another Capture Energy in his hand, and he's going to try and Stellar Wish for something here, because he's still needing pieces by the looks of things.
Absolutely. He's not got that lock established. I mean, we did see the nice turn where he put Robin down to a 0-card hand, but it wasn't combined with a Chip Ice Axe. We've seen some Boss's Orders with a Galamine, but Robin was able to work out of it, and we haven't seen any kind of lock re-established. We've been seeing some kind of soft, occasional locking from Tord here, but we've not seen those real highlight turns like we saw yesterday. So this is giving an opening for Robin, and if there was one Boss's Orders in his deck, well, he'd probably flip too many tails, to be fair, but it would at least give him a chance.
Tord's able to establish another Cinccino here, so he can use Make Do a second time this turn, as well as Stellar Wish, so he must be fishing for a combo piece. I imagine Lieutenant Surge would be the first thing that he wants to rattle off here. That might be a piece that he's missing right now. Choosing to Stellar Wish first tells me he may not have many good Make Do targets either in his hand. So we'll see where this gets him.
Yeah, you either get a card you want or you get a card you can throw away with Make Do. Either way, you'll make do. You'll be all right.
Yeah, it only means he has a 5-card dig for a card that he really wants, if that makes sense, because you can go 7 cards deep into the deck if you use the Make Do first. This way, you select your card from the 5 and then you Make Do with your choice now that you have that information. So it's an information game compared to the deepest dig. So it's a bit of a trade-off that he's gone for there. Actually doesn't even use the backup Make Do, so his entire hand is full of good cards by the looks of things. He's just going to end on Intrepid Sword instead. Go down to 1 prize for Robin. That's more or less guaranteed. I almost said the word guaranteed and got scared because there are coin flips involved. But yeah, that's all Robin can do here. He can attack one more time. Tord knows that there's an attack available. He's going to actually go back into double by the looks of things.
Guarantee
so he doesn't even need to... Yeah, this time it is a guarantee. It still means he has a couple recycles rooting around. He may want to play Telescopic Sight just so that it's not a card that he could be chipped into. There's not much else you can do here.
No, but there is an argument until he gets hand disrupted to kind of keep a big hand for if Jesse and James do come down. But then again, Tord has not been playing random Jesse James here. He's been playing it when he knows he can empty out Robin's hand. Does keep hold of it, so he's got something to discard in the future. Does get a KO on the Jirachi. Goes down to 1 prize. And in most games where you're up and you've taken 5 prizes and your opponent hasn't taken any, you're feeling really good about this. But we saw, and you spotted it, Tord had an extra Make Do he chose not to use. And if you're choosing not to draw extra cards in a combo deck like this, it's likely that Tord is going to have a monster turn here. I mean, if he doesn't, he's going to lose the game, but I think it's pretty likely.
Yeah, and we do see a Capture Energy starting off his turn on the Cinccino here. He could start looking for the likes of Lucario Melmetal or just the Drillbur. I think his route is just reloading Galamine and Boss's Orders here. We also see the evolution into Silvally GX. And I think we're going to start seeing the unloading of hand cards for Robin now. Most likely some Lieutenant Surge plays. Tord's making all these actions before using Make Do, which tells me he can put his hand size low enough to get actual Silvally value here with the help of Jesse James. We haven't seen the Chip Ice Axe for Robin. Tord with a quick choice, which tells us there's a safe card on the top. Sometimes you do see Tord wait a little bit first, but here we go, in with the Boss's Orders, the Lieutenant Surge, and here's going to be the Jesse James, you'd have to imagine. Then he's going to be reloading with Silvally. There's also the Galamine. He's got everything he needs here. And, then he can do Make Do's.
He doesn't even necessarily need Jesse and James because he knows that Robin needs a 2-card combo.
True.
That being the Glenwood Tangle and the Energy, and he knows that Robin has got 1 card in hand, and he knows what the other card is. So Tord can be absolutely certain already that Robin is not going to be able to get that Crobat out the active next turn, unless that card in hand is something that can draw him extra cards, which is probably why we are going to see the Jesse and James. But it's still... Tord is in a great position here, even without Jesse and James.
Yeah, he's digging for it, as we can see here. He is able to Silvally for a couple cards, then use double make do. Like you say, he only really loses to Professor's Research if he doesn't discard Robin's 1-card hand. And at the very least, he can just Intrepid Sword to go down to a 6-card deck. And yeah, no Jesse James. So Robin would have won if he was stamped into a Professor's Research here. Well, had a chance to win, I should say. There was no guarantee that he would hit his Stadium and Energy card, but there was a couple of Recycle Energies and a powerful Colorless in his deck, so he would have had easy outs other than that Glimwood Tangle. Basically a 50-50 shot, but no research in his stamp to 1, so Tord now will certainly be accessing the bottom of his deck, which allows him now to begin the Chip Ice Axe, Jesse James combo, and that could be the end of things for Robin. I don't think there's enough valid cards in his deck when he only has 1 card to play that can beat Tord at this point. There's only exactly Professor's Researches, and Tord can probably keep those at bay with Chip Ice Axe at this point. I don't think there's enough individual cards that can all show up 3 at once under a Chip Ice Axe.
No, so we do see the Chip Ice Axe. That reset stamp surprised me ever so slightly because Tord basically knew that Robin didn't have the research or he would have played it, but then we see the Jesse and James, so now we got a 0-card hand with the Chip Ice Axe. So now Robin, and this is what we were alluding to a minute ago, the lock wasn't on, it hasn't been on all game, now it is on. The lock is well and truly on. Robin is stuck in the active with his Crobat. He has no cards in hand. Tord knows what Robin is going to top deck and knows it isn't going to work. So Tord is now going to do his thing. Excadrill is going to Rototiller. Going to get back all of those pieces. Chip Ice Axe and Jesse and James really is all you need. And at that stage, it is just make sure Robin always has a 0-card hand with nothing useful. And at this stage, we're back to unless Tord actually cannot Chip Ice Axe, because there are too many good cards on top of Robin's deck, Robin's not going to win this game.
Absolutely, and I think Robin's still playing. Oh, that's one of the Professor's Researches gone. That's something you really like to discard because that's one of the only scary cards for you, and Robin sees. So it must have been, that must have been his 2nd copy of Professor's Research in the discard pile. So I think Robin only continues playing if he has 3 researches, because then Tord needs to chip 3 Professor's Research and feel very bad. So that's why Robin was sticking around. As soon as that Professor's Research is discarded by Tord, thanks to the reset stamp, Robin has no win condition remaining.
And we saw a very similar thing yesterday, a very similar situation where as soon as one of those 3 outs went, then the player playing Tord just conceded, just gave up the game. Because you're right, there is that tiny, tiny slim chance that Tord goes Chip Ice Axe. No, there's free research. I've got to give him a research. Now it's potentially on. Even with the research, Robin still would have needed to hit exactly that combination of Glimwood Tangle and an Energy, which is not a given, I don't think, given his deck size. So Robin was in a bad position, and we saw then very, very close. But that's what Tord's deck does. It doesn't matter if you take 5 prizes. Once Tord gets that lock on, and Robin's in an awkward situation, he's kind of got to play those Crobat, etc. in the early game to get rolling. But we saw it might only have a retreat cost of 1. The reality is late in the game, it might as well have an infinite retreat cost. It's not getting out the active.
Yeah, and I think Robin actually played really well that game as well. He used his reset stamps and his Marnies proactively, very early, limited towards draw. You know, if the coin flips had been better for him into that Zacian V, would have been a completely different story. Tord would have had a 6-card hand to play with and just a Lily's Polka Doll in play with no Minccino set up. It took Tord a long time to actually get rolling with Make Do. So in some regards, he got a little bit unlucky as well. But as soon as you get that lock established, there's not many cards remaining in Robin's deck that can actually get him out at that point. It's only exactly Professor's Researches that can really help him out. And like we say, only 2 copies of Switch, only 2 copies of Replacement Stadium. These are the things that Tord has identified and is punishing in this matchup.
And he's played it absolutely brilliantly. And you got to remember, that Zacian that did not get knocked out used Intrepid Sword a lot throughout the rest of the game. That drew an awful lot of cards. So let's head on over into game 2 then, see if Robin can rush or see if Robin can get a little bit luckier on those late game Chip Ice Axes. It's going to be an uphill struggle for Robin. I think you've got to say that Tord is the favourite in this particular match, but we'll have a little bit of a look and see if Robin can squeak out game 2 and force a game 3. Remember, we are in the losers bracket here. even though we're watching probably the two best players in Europe, one of them is going to be eliminated from the tournament.
Oh, man, and Tord with an incredible start. Once again, starting with a Jirachi. Already has that Zacian V on the bench. Tord only plays 2 copies of Jirachi. He seems to start it every game, which is pretty good for him. Robin has a decent start himself. He does have Capture Energy. He can go ahead and grab Porygon. There is already a Porygon in hand, but he could be using that for Pokemon Communication next turn. If he wants to turn that into a draw option, by the looks of things, not... Oh, he does actually have Rare Candy in hand, so he could be starting to swing with even the Cramorant V Max next turn if he really wants to. So his hand isn't going very far, but it has a lot of pieces to be aggressive like last game.
Yeah, he's got access to the Porygon Z turn 2 with some energy and the Cramorant, but it needs some kind of drawing option there, and that's kind of an awkward situation. We see this quite a lot. It's that you can have this Pokemon you really want, or you can have a draw card, and if you choose not to get a draw card, then you might be stuck there for a long time without anything going on. It's an awkward situation. Most of the time, you have to go after the draw card there, so it's going to be interesting to see what Robin does. Can have a great turn, but unless Robin top decks a draw card, it's going to be a very awkward hand to make that decision.
Tord kicks things off with his own Stellar Wish, picks up a Bird Keeper. We are going to see a Pokemon Communication now. Could even just be for that second Jirachi if he has access to it. That would allow him to freely Bird Keep into another Jirachi, get another Wish going if he really would like. Because you don't really want to Bird Keeper into your Zacian V. It's just too dangerous because Robin does have that in the locker where he can just make a big push, does hit more heads than last time and take a big 2-price KO. And as we've seen, Zacian is critical for getting hand advantage at the end of each turn.
No, absolutely. That Intrepid Sword comes out again and again and again. It's one of the things that makes Zacian such a ridiculous card. Like, it's one of the best decks in the format with ADP. And it's one of the best decks in the format with Lucario and Melmetal. And then we see decks like this and Blacephalon decks and a bunch of others where you're not even playing any Metal Energy. There is absolutely no chance you're going to attack with Zacian V, and yet it still sees play for that Intrepid Sword ability. I mean, if you're making a Hall of Fame of Pokemon cards, Zacian's going to have to get entry.
Yeah, I mean, just incredible. When you see him in the Fire decks, when you see him in the Control decks, you know that Intrepid Sword is just a very, very good hand advantage tool. Like we've seen stadiums in the past, like Tropical Beach, it's a very similar deal where ending your turn, get some extra cards. It's better than just announcing pass for certain. And this just allows some wild combinations. So many cards that you see in no other decks feature in Tords for exactly that reason. And we are actually going to see that second Jirachi come down. We also see the Bird Keeper for 3 cards. We are going to see another Stellar Wish. Tord even put down a Mew here, so he's protecting himself from Spit Shot plays, which is very interesting. Didn't see that in game 1, but it does mean that he can try and protect some Minccino in the early game, and that's exactly why. Wow, 2 of them straight away. Really insane turn 1 for Tord. Filling his board with a ton of draw. He's got a backup Jirachi for this one in the active that could get KO'd, and wow, insane stuff for him.
And we just saw Robin top deck a Professor's Research, which was the best possible card.
Wow.
Now he can just play out his turn. He can do what he was going to do. He can get the Porygon Z, he can get the Cramorant V Max, he can attach the 2 energy, and then just get a complete new hand of 7. You know, the kind of thing that would get you a high 5 if you were playing in a physical tournament a couple of years ago. Fresh new hand of 7, no resources lost. We do see more energy coming in as well. So it's one of those situations, how much energy do you put on? I think it's only one head needed to KO the Jirachi, but we've seen Robin's flips since he got down in the loser's bracket.
And interestingly, because you can't gust up Zacian V anyway, these triple accelerations really don't do much for you. You want them for exactly the likes of Silvally GX or for Excadrill that have 140 hit points. So yeah, he's just saying that 4 flips should be enough for him. Robin is re-establishing a second Porygon because he knows, again, Tord can aggressively KO stuff if he has to, and Porygon Z is weak to fighting. Just another Pokemon in the game that has that weakness that Tord can take advantage of. Not really something he thought of coming in. I'm sure he wasn't really expecting Cramorant VMAX to be an archetype that he would come up against. But Robin can go ahead and max jet here, hoping for not 4 tails. Oh no, okay, there we go. 1 KO. He's still terrible on average for his heads tails ratio. But he is able to initiate the prize race here.
He is, and that Mew on Tor's side of the bench is huge because a Lily's Pokédoll here would be invincible. Well, not invincible, but it would force Robin to attack into it because with no gusting to hit the bench and not being allowed to hit the bench just normally with someone like a Cramorant, it basically locks Robin into attacking the active, whatever it might be. So just having that Mew on the bench basically means that Tord can potentially, for the next 4 turns, pop a Lily's Pokédoll in the active and just guarantee that Robin is wasting those turns in terms of not taking prizes, giving Robin time to set up, get a second Porygon Z, etc. But if Tord wants to buy some time, he knows Robin's not playing Gusting, Mew protects the bench, he hasn't put any Lily's Pokédoll down yet, but I'd be very surprised if we didn't see that used in the next few turns.
Absolutely. We are going to see the Sonia. It's going to go ahead and pull some Pokemon out. He's instantly going to bench a type Null here. He's also going to Stellar Wish for his Lieutenant Surge, and he can once again end on Intrepid Sword. No Chinchino's coming down. A tad little bit unfortunate, but this could be an incentive for Robin to fire off a Reset Stamp here, because he doesn't really want to sit on his hand too much. You could possibly make a Skylar play and just quick ball out something like a Dubwool or something like that, but you don't want your hand size to get too low. So instead, still holding on to that Reset Stamp for now. I guess when you know your opponent doesn't have access to Chinchinos, you can wait a little bit longer. So again, just one head flip. He's finally ticked the box saying, I know I'm flipping coins. I know I can do other actions. I just want to take this knockout right here, right now.
He once again hit 1 out of 4. That is 2 turns in a row. He's hit 1 out of 4 heads.
Well, enough's enough. That's all you care about at this stage for Robin. Taking a couple early aggressive prizes, towards still finding it difficult to access his Chinchinos as it stands. We'll see if the Intrepid Sword gave him any help here, or if the Type Null is just going to sit in the line of fire. We are going to see the Capture Energy for the Type Null here. Can go ahead and help him grab another Pokemon that he can just, again, put into the firing line if he would prefer. So still plenty of options for him. Hasn't played a supporter this turn yet either. Could just be another Bird Keep play as well, of course. So many options.
There we go.
We are going to see the Bird Keeper, exactly. He has another Drillbur already in hand from the Sonia from the previous turn. And finally, we do see some Chinchinos, I should say, online. And they're going to start using Make Do, filtering the bad cards at this stage out, and allowing him to go deeper, really put pressure on Robin to have his Marnies and the likes of Reset Stamp, which is currently chilling in his hand.
That is a lot of cards in Tord's hand. Tord he's getting to that stage where he is going to be able to just go Reset Stamp, Jesse James, double Weezing, and actually get rid of Robin's entire hand. You can't let Tord's hand get too big because when you've got 4 prize cards remaining, it is, I mean, I'd say as simple as, but Reset Stamp, Jesse and James, double Weezing, Chip Ice Axe, and all of a sudden, you're completely hand-locked. So Robin, I mean, the good news is he's going to take a 3rd prize here. The downside is we saw this last game. We saw Robin just casually take the first 5 prizes, taking these KOs. We saw Tord being willing to give up those first 5 prizes and not really care because that 6th one just never came. We do finally see the Reset Stamp, and yeah, that got rid of a few cards.
Yeah, and Robin is also going to establish Skylar for Marnie, so he's hoping to just back-to-back make this combo happen. Look at the number of heads there. Seriously dealing with that Drillbur, because now Robin's in the danger zone, basically. His hand size can get stamped down, he can get Jesse Jamesed, and Weezings can then put him to 0. He can get Chip Ice Axed, so it's these knockouts that he's going to be taking. He's wanting to Marnie into Marnie. He played that Reset Stamp because Tord's hand was something like 14 or so cards, which was just way too much, way too easy for Tord to have that combination of cards. Robin knew he already had established the Lieutenant Surge, so shuffling that all in, giving him a random 6 instead, now gives hopefully Robin the opening to play a Marnie next turn.
Yeah, he's going to want to keep the hand disruption up, and that's all Robin can really do at this stage. Robin's doing everything he should. He's managed to not play those Crobat down. He's got set up without using Crobat and Dedenne, which is a huge advantage and a big change over game 1. Oh, but now Tord drops a Reset Stamp to put him down to a 3-card hand. Disc Reload puts him back up to a 5-card hand, and he's got to Make Do as well. Does he have Jesse James and 1 Weezing? If he does, that is going to be bad news for Robin.
Yeah, he made a big push there. Robin played his Pal Pad to just get some Bird Keepers for more draw potentially this turn. He also recovered a couple Pokemon, including a Jirachi. So now that we see the Capture Energy onto Mew, it could be an easy pay retreat into Stellar Wish here to give him a 5-card deeper dig. That's exactly what we are going to see. So, yeah, Tord really is looking for that Jesse James combo. If he already has the Weezing in hand, or he could be looking for something like Pokemon Communication, and actually already has it. So, yeah, it looks like the handlock could be happening this turn.
Oh, and that's upsetting. And the problem, now the good news is there aren't any Pokédolls down for Tord yet. So Robin is going to be able to get a prize next turn. It's actually a Cinccino to dig for a few more cards. So we might be further away than we thought.
This is essentially that 7-card dig for a supporter. Tord could even be looking just for Birdkeeper here, so he can Birdkeep into the Jirachi and give himself just more cards, because, once again, his hand size is kind of low at this stage. You don't mind it too much because you have that Silvally, but yeah, Tord's just going to keep going lower. 2 is, again, a pretty scary number for Robin to go down to. It just means that Tord doesn't need half as many of the combination pieces that he otherwise would need. So we are going to see the Stellar Wish into a Lily's Pokédoll now instead, and probably just ending on the Intrepid Sword. Robin, though, he can go ahead and re-establish an energy attachment here, and he's probably just going to go ahead and Quick Ball for Crobat and dig for that money, because, again, he's kind of terrified of the hand size. Even, you know, taking Tord down a couple cards is important here.
But do you want to put a Crobat down? Like, both those Porygon Z can actually attach for an attack for a triple acceleration energy. And it's not a great attack, and it confuses you, but it's an attack. At the moment, there is nothing on Robin's board that can be properly locked in the active. I don't think I'd want to put a Crobat down here. I think Max Jet, just take a KO. No. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's a fair point, to be honest. The Porygons do have a few more usable energy cards. But like you say, after you do use one Tantrum attack, you then are confused and things get a little bit dicey. But yeah, Robinson can go ahead, take the plunge, take another KO. We know Tord has a Lily's Pokédoll in his hand now, so it's going to be a turn of freedom for Tord, guaranteed, basically. And he's starting to get towards that bottom end of his deck at this stage. And I imagine after possibly another Birdkeep turn here, where he just Birdkeepers into his Lily's Pokédoll and an Intrepid Sword, he'll be basically accessing everything at this stage.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. We do see a Pokédoll hit the bench. Birdkeeper comes down, I would imagine, into the Pokédoll. And this is what we were saying a moment ago. There is nothing Robin can do at this stage. He can't attack the bench. He's got no gusting. So next turn, Robin attacks into Lily's Pokédoll. And Tord's got a bunch of Pokédoll in his deck. So if Robin KOs the Pokédoll, Tord can just replace it next turn. Bearing in mind, he's got a gigantic hand at this stage. So Tord can really just spend the next couple turns building his hand up for the hand lock while just putting Pokédolls down in its stead. It's not ideal. And again, of course, we see 4 out of 5 because it's a Pokédoll. Robin can flip great against a Pokédoll.
Yeah, Cramorant does not like those, apparently. He just completely demolishes those. Tord does play 2 copies of Lily's Pokédoll, so he can, again, take another turn off of retreating into it. But if he's already established the hand lock, he may just be putting down a Drillbur here, as we do see the Chip Ice Axe come in, and he's probably looking to use Lieutenant Surge, Jesse James, Boss's Orders, that combination of cards, to give Robin no valid targets and a 2 retreat cost Pokemon trapped in the active.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely what you've got to be going for here. Jesse and James is going to put Robin down to a 0-card hand, which is not really where Robin wants to be. And we do have a difference from game 1. And the difference is anything in the active, Robin can attack with. You know, Porygon Z is a colorless Pokemon. If there are powerful colorless energy left in his deck, he could actually attack that and a triple acceleration energy. I think Porygon Z does 120?
Yes.
Is that correct? So that would be a little bit short of getting a KO on an Excadrill, but with a powerful colourless energy, it would get there. And I know it's 2 energy cards and blah, 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 but it is an option that wasn't open to him in the previous game. So I love what Robin's done setting up his board here. Again, we're talking playing against Tord's deck. It's not a great option, but it is at least an option.
So Tord is going to end on the Intrepid Sword. He forced a card into Robin's hand with a Chip Ice Axe. Quick Ball is unusable because there are no targets he can use to discard. So Tord now has got to the bottom of his deck. He can simply retreat into his Excadrill, and the loop starts again. It looks like Tord has got there with a 2-prize bit of breathing room this time around.
Absolutely. And Yeah, this is looking very, very nice. We're going to see the lock come down. Are we going to... I mean, if we don't see a Jesse and James, Robin is going to be using that quick ball, but maybe Todd's thinking, go on, use a quick ball, put a Crobat down, see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be amazed if we didn't see a Jesse James here, to be honest. We are going to see a combination of Jesse James and the one of Team Yell Grunt here, forcing a Recycle Energy into the discard pile. This is the only way that Todd can attack Recycle Energies, so he can try and do this as a loop for a little while and make sure that the Cramorant is just no longer a threat, which is a pretty cool way to attack these energies, which otherwise basically never go anywhere in most situations.
Nope, not at all, and I like this. I mean, I like me some Excadrill anyway, but we've got the lock going now. So we see 3 Chip Ice Sacks on a reset stamp coming in, so presumably there is a Jesse and James already in hand. Robin draws a useless rare candy, passes the turn. Todd knew he was going to draw a useless rare candy, and I think what we're going to see here is exactly what we saw back in game 1. Robin knows Todd's deck and he knows his own deck. He is going to be really careful here. Oh, that's going to get rid of an energy and a Marnie, which is not good. They're cards that Robin wants to keep. But Robin essentially at this stage goes, right, here are my outs. As soon as they're gone, we'll probably see a concession again.
Yeah, that's 2 big ones just ticked off for Todd, and Robin is thinking about it, I think, at this stage, especially when you're up against Todd, who's well-versed in this deck, clearly, and is already holding on to 2 Chip Ice Axes and has all 3 accessible. The odds of just 3 Chip Ice Axes giving Robin 3 amazing cards 3 times in a row, it's just not going to happen, unfortunately. So Robin pretty much knows that he's just trapped at that stage. Todd playing that many Chip Ice Axe means that the luck element is basically taken away from Robin, so he's always going to be drawing into an awkward card.
And we saw, you know, a deck like that is not an easy deck to play. It can be a very nerve-wracking deck to play because, of course, you need to always make that right decision. You are going to be giving up prize after prize after prize, and it is that calculated collateral damage. You need to think, right, this is getting KO'd, I don't care. This is getting KO'd, I don't care. You just need to make sure you get to the point where you do care and you haven't lost, and you're playing everything in that right order. It's not a deck for novices, I think is probably a fair way to put it. You really need to understand the game, the meta game, you need to understand the matchups, and you really need that high skill level to pilot the kind of deck Todd is playing to the kind of level he's playing it. But as we've seen, if anyone can, Todd absolutely can.
Yeah, and I really like how Todd approaches this sort of way to build the deck. He prioritizes draw over anything else. He has the mini goal every game of let me get to 0 and then I do what I want is kind of the deal. So prioritizing, you know, power padding back bird keepers over things like Jesse James's boss's orders, keeping track of his resources the entire time while still knowing that I can just get to that bottom state. I have enough turns to get myself there, and then I have that leeway of just doing that